As a founder, as an executive, as a leader in your organization, you simply can't, you are not allowed to go to your team and say, we do this because I say so. It's a half joke because it's true, partially. And I'm always telling them, if we have data, we go with data. If all we have is opinions, let's go with mine. That's the biggest mistake that I see particularly in startups that scale. Your opinion doesn't matter, neither does mine. Let's look at the data. The distribution channels that are working in one market might fail gloriously in another market. Just to give you an example from Uber, distribution partnerships, they were the main acquisition channels in Poland. They never worked in Romania. You need to adapt the distribution strategy market by market in Europe, and that makes it really hard for a startup to conquer Europe versus going for Brazil, versus going for US.
In her first role as a growth startup operator, she led Uber's operations and spearheaded its rapid growth in Romania to 1 million users in less than 2 years. After Uber, she joined Revolut in 2018 when they had under 20,000 users and led their growth to 1.5 million users in Romania and became instrumental in expanding Revolut's user base globally. As she says it, growth doesn't have a secret.
I am an exponent of the hustle culture. I've hustled my way through everything throughout my career. It's about a lot of hard work, but it's about always prioritizing impact over effort. No one cared about the number of hours that you worked, but everyone did care about the impact that you delivered in those hours.
Irina, thank you so much for coming all the way from Bucharest to Oradea. Welcome for the first time in Oradea, right?
Yes, thank you for inviting me.
Irina, I have interesting questions that we like to open our episodes at Startup Talks this season. And it sounds like this. What truth do very few people agree with you on?
So many of them. So I think so many of them because I'm a rebel and I've always tried to take the uncharted path. So if everyone does things one way, how about we try to do it differently and see how it goes? So I'm quite accustomed with disagreements from these perspectives. I don't know. I can give you two examples. One is wider and relates to my entire career. It's so. After I finished my studies, I first started an NGO. We were doing entrepreneurship education programs for the youth and my own marketing agency working with tech startups. And then I joined Uber, which was a high growth company. And then after I left Uber, I joined Revolut. And at that point, my father looked at me and asked me, so you learned so much school, and you went from a taxi that's not a taxi to a bank that's not a bank. Do any normal employer out there wants to eventually hire you and maybe build an actual career, real career for a real company? And I think this was really funny because this was common sense in my family that what I'm doing is not like the real thing. Yeah, it's something. What's this about? All this entrepreneurship. My parents are both engineers. They were both employees. Now they are both retired. So for them, it was like the entrepreneurship startup route. It's so risky. It's so why?
Yeah.
Why would you do that? So this is something that with the disagreement on. And then I think it's really good when people disagree with what you plan to do because this means that it's fundamentally different and you can't grow. You can't do the same thing and expect the same results because even if you look at growth and marketing and my area of work, if you're doing exactly what the others are doing, you're never going to be the first mover. You're always going to be following in their footsteps and you're not going to achieve the same results because channels saturate, tactics saturate. So what you should do is do it differently. And then people are inherently going to oppose with what you are saying because people are inherently resistant to change. So I don't know, I remember back at Uber at some point when I said, let's stop all performance marketing because our product is mature. And my assumption is the quality of the funnel was low. And my assumption is that a lot of those customers are going to get back into organic signups. And the ones that we lose don't matter anyway because they are just quantity, but no quality. And this actually impacts our funnel. And I remember my GM looking at me then and telling me, are you sure you want to do that? I'm going to put you in front of the metro station with cards to actually sign up people. Because if this fails, we were talking about 40% of our signups that were coming
Wow.
from performance marketing. And I was like, okay, but what if it wins? So let's try it out,
Wow.
because we'll never know unless we try it out. And we tried it out and it worked. And my assumption was correct. About half of those customers got back in organic signups, which significantly improve the quality of our funnel, while actually bringing a lot of revenue back to the company that we could invest in other channels.
Definitely, you are a high risk taker. From
I
what you
wouldn't.
just no.
I wouldn't say so. I'm quite risk averse myself as
Okay.
a person. Although I'm in tech, although I'm operating in high risk environments, basically, I would describe myself as risk averse. But I'm all for experimentation. So when I come with something that's radically different, I don't come. I think there was a meme at some point that certainty only belongs to people that know nothing. I'm not certain about anything. I think that it might work and I'm willing to try it. So I think it's about resilience to change and openness to try things, but it's not about being risk averse, because I'm quite averse to risk. That's why I'm willing to experiment and try things out.
That was one of the questions I had, was like, how do you see experimentation in growth? Because this is something that we try to like learn founders and teach founders and make them understand the value of this. How do you see experimentation in growth marketing?
I think it's essential. I've worked with a lot of founders over time, and I think all founders, as all high performers, are stubborn, and they fall in love with their work and they fall in love with their products. And I'm always a firm advocate of, hey, we are really passionate about the work that we do, but we are dispassionate when we are taking decisions. So as a founder, as an executive, as a leader in your organization, you simply can't, you are not allowed to go to your team and say, we do this because I say so. If you use because I say so, or if you get in the position where your team refers to you as, I don't know, it came from above. And I'm always asking, okay, from above, you mean from God? Because if it came from God, maybe if you're religion, you aren't going to question it. You need to build a culture of trial and error in your team and to encourage this experimentation, to encourage people speaking up. I've managed very big teams. People in my teams knew their stuff better than I do, because as a leader, as a founder, as an executive, you have the helicopter view, but your team has the ground level view. Your role as a leader is to enable your team to not get in the position where they no longer see the woods because of the trees. And your team needs to make you see the trees, because sometimes you fail to
Yes.
see those trees because of the distance, because you're far removed from the action. And you need to remove all ego from the conversation. And the only way to do that is to build a culture of experimentation, high psychological safety culture, where everyone in the team, I say something, I have an idea. Hey, how about we do that? And everyone in the team has the freedom to come to you and say, that might be a really stupid idea. Let's see how we can try it. Let's see how we can experiment it. Let's see how we can maybe not spend 1 million on this very bold idea. Let's experiment with it at a lower scale and learn from the experimentation. I think everyone is, and it's funny because I talk with a lot of startups and they are always like, if you have Uber and Revolut on the resume, it's like you have that magic playbook and you come to my company and you apply that magic playbook and boom, it's going to work. And it's not, because there's no playbook, there's no success recipe. It's a matter of trial and error. And Steve Jobs was saying that you can only connect the dots looking backwards. And yes, because looking backwards, you're building sense into what
Yes.
you're doing and you're rationalizing your decisions. And truth is, it's not like that.
How do you try to maybe implement this mindset working with startups, working with founders? What's like the value proposition for the founders? Let's do more of this.
So I think it's about the fact that, hey, do you know what works? Do you have a growth model that works? If you do have a growth model that works, try not to jinx it. Maybe, I mean, don't ruin what already works. But if you have something that doesn't work, if you have problems to solve, no one is going to come with a solution and say, hey, do that. The best consultants out there, the best advisors out there are going to encourage you to try it out, because you need to see what works. And this is the only actual way to solve problems. No one has universal answers. So basically, it's this or die. So it's try or die.
Correct. And what? Okay, but
Can you be lucky? Yeah, it might happen that you're lucky, and the first thing, the one that you have a hunch to do works.
That was my next point, was like, okay, maybe there are founders that, okay, they tried this, they tried that, they tried, I don't know, performance marketing, they tried content marketing, they tried this and that. And they don't feel that like nailed that growth model yet. But how do you know, like, are you going the right direction or not? What would be kind of, I don't know, the KPI of this experimentation that like tries to guide you?
Yeah, so I think there's no single KPI to guide you. I think every single experiment needs to have a really narrow set of metrics. And I think you told me about, hey, we've tried this, we've tried content marketing, and you said content marketing, and this actually triggered me, because sometimes we try, but we don't try hard enough, or we don't try long enough. So take content marketing or SEO as an example. This is not something, it's like the overnight success. It doesn't actually happen overnight. So you need to be committed in trying, and you need to persist until the moment when you can draw a conclusion that it works or it doesn't. And I think there's a very fine balance, and with the startups that I'm working, I'm always working on that very fine balance. So we're all impatient, and it's not only about the founders that are impatient, and we need to have that bias to action and that sense of urgency. We have investors. We might be running out of money. We need to close the next round. We need to show the numbers. So there's a reason behind that impatience. But we need to balance the long term, the strategy, the mid and long-term strategy, with the low-hanging fruits, the tactics that are bringing the results and moving those metrics that are relevant for our investors, that are relevant for our business, in order to show that our business is viable, in order to show early traction for our business, such that we can move on. So I think you can make the mistake, and I did that mistake as well at some point. I was looking for the mid long-term strategy, which was great, but that takes time to implement. So you
have
can't
to survive.
Yeah, you have to survive to live to see
Exactly.
that day. So in the meantime, you need to pull those tactics, those experiments, and you need to get into a cadence where you're able to actually experiment with tactics and small things quite regularly and quite frequently. And 90% of them will fail, but the 10% that are going to succeed are going to propel your business forward.
It's like the VC game. Like, you invest in 100 startups, 90 will maybe fail, but 10 will just give you the profits that will just cover everything and make a lot of profit.
Yeah, and it's the same with growth tactics, and it's not magic, and no one has all the answers. Like, if you want to hire someone that has a playbook, has all the answers and knows everything, just don't. Just don't. When I see someone that's overconfident, yeah, I know, I've done this, I'm gonna do this and this and this, and it's gonna work. Okay, I'm going to hire someone that doesn't know everything, that doesn't have so many certainties, because truth is, yes, there are a lot of things that we could potentially try, but do I know? Can I guarantee that those things are gonna work? Not really.
How about the people that they are certain that things will not work?
That's another story. I think it takes a lot of patience, therapy. What helped me a lot, and it's a half joke, but what helped me a lot is cognitive behavior therapy. So I'm not going to go into any deep trauma stuff, because it's not my thing, not gonna be. But cognitive behavior therapy, which actually gives you the tool to manage and cope with this type of stuff on both sides. And I think, there are people that are going to tell you, hey, this is not gonna work. And then you just need to ask, okay, why? Because that's why, like, if you're going in a team and you haven't been there from the beginning, you haven't been with a startup from day one. So for example, in my former role at Monly, I was always asking the marketing director who's been there for 6 years. And whenever I had the magic, brilliant, of course, idea, I went to him and asked him, hey, Christy, have you tried this before? Did it work? Because sometimes people say, yeah, okay, that's a brilliant idea, it's not going to work, because they've tried it before and it didn't. And then you don't need to repeat the same mistakes all over and over again. But then there are people who are just resistant to change and they assume it doesn't work. So whenever I come up with an idea and I get the answer, yeah, that's not going to work. Okay, sure. Why? Because you need to understand the why. Because if it's your hunch, let's try it out and see. Because it's, I have it's a quote from Jim Barksdale from Netscape. I'm using it with the team, and again, it's a half joke because it's true partially. And I'm always telling them, if we have data, we go with data. If all we have is opinions, let's go with mine. So let's go out there and gather the data, because otherwise we go with my opinion. So it's not about my opinion or your opinion, and it's not about. That's the biggest mistake that I see in, particularly in startups that scale. People overranking leaders, overranking people in their teams, because my opinion is that it's not going to work. Your opinion doesn't matter. Neither does mine. Let's look at the data.
Nice. 'Cause that I asked you this because a lot of time, I know there are a lot of scenarios when people just tell you like, I don't believe this is going to work, or this wouldn't work. And you said before that something very important here. They tried that before, but maybe they tried poorly or not hard enough.
Yeah, but it depends, because normally if you document things properly, if you've experimented before, so it happened back at Monly, we built a growth team, and the team was running experiments for years before that. So whenever you have a brilliant idea of an experiment, you need to look at the experiment repository to see if that experiment has been carried out before, and in which, of course, if you change the circumstances, if you change the length of the experiment, if you change something about the experiment, you can run it again. But sometimes it's just been tried before. You need to know your data. You need to know what has been done before. And again, I think I read this somewhere, and a friend of mine who's also a startup founder was telling me this, and he was telling me, don't, and this applies to founder, this applies to leaders in organizations, and they were telling me, hey, I'm not taking money from investors before I take them to lunch. And if they season their food before tasting it, I'm not going to get money from them, because they are going to try to change my business without understanding what I'm actually doing based on their previous references and stuff. And it's an analogy. And again, it's a half truth. But I think the big problem with know-it-alls, because I've seen it and I see it. I think the problem is never with the mid-senior ICs in the teams who are really driven to contribute. The problem is with the key leaders in the organization. You need to have a beginner's mindset. It's about having a beginner's mindset, and it's about being open to being challenged, and you never know anything. So you need to actually get.
How do you develop, or how do you like maintain that beginner's mindset when you are a company that, I don't know, grew maybe from 3 people to 300, and I don't know, it's 10 years old now maybe?
So I think it's about being very grounded. It's about making sure that you leave all ego aside, and you hire the right people. I think it's really important. It's really important to hire the right people, because of course, if you're working with underperformers, and that's a whole different conversation. But if you're working with people who are not right for your company, for you, you're always going to be a know-it-all, because those people are simply off, and you need to be the know-it-all in this circumstance. So it's about being grounded. It's about being humble, and I think it's a thing that you develop, because as you start building and you see the results of your work, there's a very fine line that you can cross between you develop a God complex and you start patting yourself on the back. And in order to counter that, so I think what helps me, and I take a lot of pride in the fact that I don't have an ego, and I didn't manage to build an ego. And I credit this to the fact that I'm always learning. I'm always looking for new things to learn. I'm always looking for new programs. So learning from myself, and then the same time is learning from the people you're working with. And no matter how junior, it's not about the seniority. It's not about the years. You can learn from everyone, and learning from each other and creating that collaborative learning environment helps you stay grounded as a leader.
Going back to the founders, you work with a couple of them already. What are some of the, I don't know, myths or misconceptions that they believe or do when it comes to growth?
There are two things. So it's the impatience we're talking about. And sometimes you just need to try a bit harder and a bit longer in order to see results. Like you can't draw a conclusion. One of the startups I'm working with now, for example, we're working on a content marketing SEO strategy. And the founder is always, but I don't see the results. And I'm like, we just published the article. You're not going to see the results. So it's about... And here it's about the leaders as well. It's about trust. You need to, as a founder, particularly in the early stages, but from the early stages onwards, surround yourselves with leader you trust. If you don't trust the leaders that are around yourself, it's not gonna work, because if you don't trust them, you can't
It's
learn from each
dysfunctional
other.
from
Yeah.
day zero.
So on the founder side, it's about having leaders you trust. On the leader side, it's about calibrating expectations correctly. So I've sometimes seen, particularly in bigger environments, as companies scale, leaders overpromising in order to cover their bases. I don't know exactly why. So telling, yeah, we're going to do that, and we're going to do this app redesign, and it's going to solve all our problems. And I'm like, or not. So this is such a big bet. You can't really overpromise. You can't really say that, hey, we're doing that and we're going to solve our problem. So on one end, it all comes down to communication, and hence my reference to cognitive behavior therapy, where we need to make sure that we're on the same page and we communicate, and sometimes what you say, it's a very interesting model. And I'm going to make an analogy from cognitive behavior therapy, which is called the ABC model. And the ABC are the initials for, it's an acronym from action, belief, consequence. And the action is what actually happens. And then the consequence is what you actually do, the actual consequence, and how you feel, the emotional consequence. And in real life, you perceive the consequence as a result of the action. But the reality is that your consequence, how you act and how you feel, it's not the direct response to the action. It's a direct response to your belief, how you actually interpreted that action. So the key point is being very, very self-aware. So I always recommend to founders to be really self-aware of what are their strengths, and more particularly, what are their improvement areas, and be really, really self-aware and make sure that they nail that belief when talking with their leaders. So it's about self-awareness. It's about patience, it's about trust, and it all goes back to communication, to clear communication on both sides.
Another question I have regarding this, like myths that founders believe, or I don't know, action based on. We worked with a lot of them, and a lot of them come with technical background, and everything they see, it's product. How do you help them understand the importance of having the distribution, the growth embedded into the developing the product from, I don't know, day one, and so on and so forth, and how to balance, okay, how much is product, how much is distribution, how much is growth, how much is product, and so on and so forth?
So I think the fact that they have a technical background and they are product obsessed is great, and they should be like that, because if your product is bad, no matter how good your distribution, no matter how good your growth, you're not going to nail it.
Marketing will fix it, isn't it?
No, will not. So I think it's always about the product. So being product obsessed, it's great. I think it's very important to not have tunnel vision, because it's not about product-driven growth versus marketing-driven growth. It's about both, and it's about the right time to actually deploy them. In the beginning, in the early stages, it's always about product. But in the same time, if you have the most fantastic product in the world and no one knows about it, you're simply not gonna nail it. So it's about a combination. It's about seeing results, but it's not a chicken or the egg question. It always starts with product. And I remember, and I'm going to quote now Larry Guda, who's the founder of Envoy, and he was talking on the stage of How to Web, and at the end of his talk, he made the joke that stayed with me, and he said that we've just raised a new round, and we're hiring talented engineers until we do our first marketing hire to come on board and spend all our money. So I think it's about having the right balance, and it's about in tech. It's not about bringing that FMCG marketer that starts doing the big ATL campaigns everywhere and starts spending all your money. It's about actually bringing dollars for the buck. It's about return on investment. It's about making sure that every dollar you spend give you at least $1 back in return.
You said something about marketing growth not being magical or so on and so forth, even though on your LinkedIn profile you have something written there about your Uber experience where you were saying, I am doing the marketing magic for Uber in Romania.
Yeah,
And
thanks for pointing that out.
I caught my eye, and I was this was like my question. Okay, what was basically that magic at Uber that helped you like skyrocket their growth, and how much it was actually related on and based on, I know, data, or what was it based on?
So it was based on grit. It was based on the team. So that magic was grit. That magic was the team. And that magic was our ways of working. And our fantastic GM, which is a mentor to me. She's a mentor to me to date. So that magic is a lot of hard work. Again, like all overnight success. And the cadence of working at Uber, I took that cadence, the ways of working with me, and I tried implementing it, of course, differently, not exactly the same, in all the different roles I had afterwards. So at Uber, it all started with the data, and we had the KPIs that we wanted to achieve that were broken down per week. So we didn't have a number that we were visiting quarterly, and hey, at the end of the quarter, oh, we're 30% off. No, we actually broke that number down on weekly metrics, and we had fully automated. I haven't seen the level of data clarity that we had at Uber in none of the companies I've worked with since.
Even if afterwards you work with some fintechs which should have more data.
It's about the data visualization. It's about the access to data, and it's about the structure of the data. At Revolut, we were data driven at the core, but we were just building that. So I remember at Revolut just building those dashboards myself for the team.
So you can make sense of the data.
Yeah, because having a lot of data doesn't help. You need to actually make sense of the data. At Uber, we were starting the week by looking at our fully automated dashboards, and we were creating our own reports in order to see, hey, where do we stand with this data? And I was starting the week every Monday morning. I was running my queries. Besides the fully automated data, I was exporting and exporting CSVs into Excel, working with Excel to see where we stand. And we were like, okay, what's the target? How are we faring towards our quarterly target? And where do we stand against our weekly target? And then we had a team meeting, an all hands meeting with the entire team, where we were talking about what we are planning to do that week in order to hit our targets. That meeting was about 45 minutes to an hour. On Thursday, we had a 30 minutes follow-up meeting where we looked at the numbers versus our targets. And if we were lagging behind, that 30-minute meeting on Thursday turned into a brainstorming meeting where we actually brainstormed on what we can do, not the next week, not in 5 weeks' time, not in 2 months' time, what we can do today and tomorrow, and sometimes over the weekend as well, in order to make sure that we hit the targets for that particular week. So it's about the sense of urgency, and it's about the hard work that we actually put into.
And I think it's also like a trait of the beginner mindset. I was reading a couple of months ago one of Paul Graham's articles about how they. I mean, startup is a company that grows as a highly growth trend, and he was actually putting from their experience at YC, a number there. It was like between 5 and 7% growth weekly. And okay, the 7%, okay, debatable, whatever. But what caught my attention was that weekly, measuring things weekly. And now when you say that you were keep doing that at Uber, even if the company was, I don't know how many years old back then, I think that's incredible.
So, getting back to even more aggressive targets, do you know what was the key metric that we were chasing? We were looking after our North Star at Revolut. It was DAP, daily active people. It wasn't weekly. It wasn't week over week. It was daily. Why? Because Nick, the founder of Revolut, is, in my opinion, he's the most brilliant product person I've ever met. And I deeply believe that he's at the level of Steve Jobs. So the clarity, the product that he's built, the vision, he's at the level of Steve Jobs. I'm always going to be a fan and the groupie of him. And his vision was clear. So it's your everyday Revolut. It needs to be the financial super app, your everyday app. So I don't care about monthly. I don't care about weekly. I
don't care
want
about
my growth teams
transactions, about
to look at daily, because if you have daily active usage, everything else will follow. If you have daily active usage, revenue will follow, because no person on the planet is going to open their Revolut app just to look at the
Just to
money,
scroll.
you know, like just to count your money.
Yeah. Maybe there are some. Maybe there are. I mean, I remember Donald Duck from the back cartoons where he liked to just number his money. But yes, incredible. This was one of the questions I had. It was like, you work pretty close with both founders at Revolut, with both Nick and Vlad. What are the traits that you think that make them such successful founders and startup?
So I think there's one thing that makes the difference, and that's being a mercenary versus being a visionary. So all founders that manage to achieve greatness are visionaries. Our founders are missionaries. Our founders that are not motivated by, hey, I want to make an exit and I want to be rich. I want to get my personal security details and just run around with my expensive cars. Probably some founders achieve that even without, but they don't achieve greatness. Yep. Founders that achieve greatness are the real missionaries, are the ones that are product obsessed, that believe in their product, that are very, very immersed in the activity. I was recently looking, one of the founders that I'm a groupie of as well, but I didn't have the chance to meet, is Brian Chesky from Airbnb. And he was talking about the mistake that founders make, hiring trained executives to run their business and then going to enjoy their money and their life and when they do that, the business ends.
Yes.
Because if you want to achieve greatness, you have to be there and you have to inspire those greatness in the team. So I think with Nick Storonsky from Revolut, I worked really closely, and he was so inspiring and he was leading by example. I met founders that I was advising over time and they were like, I don't understand. We have a talent density problem in the team. People are not working. And I'm asking him, what's your work schedule? It doesn't matter. It actually does. What's your work schedule? So I'm coming to the office around noon and I'm leaving around 2 and I'm normally late for calls. I had weekly one-on-ones, plenty product reviews and other meetings with Nick. He was never 1 minute late. And if it happened to be 2 minutes late, he was writing me, sorry, Irina, 2 minutes late. And those 2 minutes were actually 2 minutes versus, I went to grab a really expensive specialty coffee and I'm going to be there 15 minutes late. And then I'm complaining about the talent density problem. And I'm coming at you and I'm telling you, you're not going to like what you hear, but you're the talent density problem. It starts with you because you hire those executives. Some of them are really driven, really committed. Some of them are like asking themselves, why would I do that if you're not doing that? In the
Exactly.
end, it's your company. It's about leading by example. And it all comes down to being a missionary versus being a mercenary.
This is exactly the code that we were exploring with our previous guest at the podcast, Chris from Draper. And this is the code. I at least he told us that Adam Draper came with this code, and this is like one of the Draper's mantra is looking for founders who are missionaries, not mercenaries. Thank you so much for like expanding on what actually this means.
I think this is so important and it sets a standard. You can't. So I always believed in there are no rules that are meant just for you, that are rules for us. Everything that applies to me applies to you as well. And inspiring by example, I don't know, I never had issues with my team. I fly Ryanair, I fly low cost all the time. Someone in my team can't come and tell me, hey, I want that expensive business flight because I'm like, look, I'm going for meetings in San Francisco and I'm flying economy premium or I'm taking extra leg seat and I'm 184. So tell me again, what do you want? You can't, you just can't. Versus if you're, I always like to say, and I build a culture in my teams of being scrappy, not crappy. So because there's a very fine line in marketing as well, and in marketing spend, in everything you do. So be scrappy, but not crappy. And
Very
your teams will
interesting.
follow.
Very interesting. Awesome. This code, I will definitely use it from now on. Is there, I don't know, beside Nick being such a visionary founder and so on and so forth, what else do you think made Revolut such a successful startup?
Nick on one end. Without Nick, there would have been no Revolut. His product obsession. So we were talking earlier as a founder, you need to be product obsessed. And besides being product obsessed is the work ethics. Because it's really easy to say, oh, that person is so successful. And this is what scares me with the new generation, with Gen Z. And I think it's a big debate. So don't get me wrong. I am an exponent of the hustle culture, and I've hustled my way through everything throughout my career. It's about impact over effort, and I think Nick had this very clear. It's about a lot of hard work, but it's about always prioritizing impact over effort, because no one cares about the number of hours at Revolut. No one cared about the number of hours that you worked, but everyone did care about the impact that you delivered in those hours. So I think it's about being product obsessed. I think it's about prioritizing impact versus over effort versus just glorifying effort. So I had circumstances where I heard, but I worked so hard. Okay, but you worked in vain. It would have been better if you just took a holiday because you didn't achieve anything. So hard work doesn't matter unless it actually delivers results. So it's basically the difference between efficiency and effectiveness, because efficiency is doing a lot of things. Effectiveness is doing the right things. And it's you need to be efficient about the right things in order to be effective. So I think it's about effectiveness. It's about working with an impact, and it's about product obsession, and it's about everyone caring. So I was very sad years back when the articles about, I remember writing an article on Medium then as well about my own experience with Revolut, because there was a media article that was portraying people at Revolut like someone like Nick would tie us to our chairs and force us to work long hours, and no one cared how long did you actually work at Revolut. But everyone cared about the impact. And did we work long hours? Yes, we did. But we did this because we actually cared about the work that we did, and we were really passionate. And for me, it's about I'm getting back to psychology as well. It's a term that was coined by Robert Csikszentmihalyi, and it took me a while to learn how to pronounce his name. And it's about getting in the state of flow. and focus, because that's
Yeah.
the next
Yeah.
thing. You got into the flow and you didn't want to cut that flow. It sometimes happened to me. It happens to me still to this day that I'm working on something and I'm really passionate about that work, that I get in the flow and I
Yep.
don't want to get that flow interrupted.
Yep.
Now there are consequences. Sometimes I forget to pick up my kid from kindergarten and then it's bad. But you need,
Yeah.
it's about that flow and that focus. And we had that at Revolut.
And how did he manage to create that
By example.
vibe?
By example.
By example.
By example. And it's about, we all shared that vision. We all wanted so badly to make Revolut work, and we really cared. And I remember there were some points where we were literally like jumping around, and we were so happy for hitting, like, it's I don't remember the term. It's in Steve, in the book about Steve Jobs, he was talking about the reality distortion field. It's about, it was quite of a collective hallucination. Like, we all wanted that badly for that to happen. And when things happened, we were really jumping around and enjoying and having fun together. And it was literally like a collective
And it was
hallucination.
natural. It was something that happened
Yeah.
natural.
Yeah.
Because a lot of companies are trying to replicate that, and it ends up so bad.
You can't, because you want to, everyone wants the results, but no one wants to put in the work that comes associated with the results. And it's the same thing with, I don't know, fitness levels. I'm really passionate about all things longevity, and I turned my lifestyle around a couple of years ago. And everyone is so impressed by the results, but no one wants the hard work that comes into the results. Oh, I would do anything to do that, except put down that pie. You know what I mean? I mean, I do anything except that.
Yep. The shortcuts.
Yeah, there are no shortcuts.
That was actually my kind of next question. Was like, what was the, I don't know, magic shortcut, whatever. What was the, how could you grow Revolut? I mean, I know in Romania you grew it from like 20K to 1.5 million or something under 2 years or something like that. How could you do that?
A lot of work, a lot of trial and error, we had back then, I remember, we had a playbook that we were contributing, all of us. We were just a couple of markets back then. We were about, I think, 200 people when I joined Revolut. We were a fairly small company. And I remember I started and I went to London, and back then we were organizing events and or attending events and distributing cards at the end of the event. And this was one of our, like, at Uber with the first ride for free. For us, it was your first card for free, and then you could link it into the app, which I think they are no longer doing today. Things that you can do in the early stage, to quote again Brian Chesky, do things that don't scale. And I remember visiting the office, and it was really funny because I had, like, you saw me, I'm a light traveler. I just had a backpack. And I had a hand trolley that I filled with cards until the card order came in Romania. And I was like asking, is it even legal for me to cross the border with that? And at that point, Nick raises his hand from the laptop and he's like, call me if you get busted. And there were a lot of things. There was a lot of hustle we were doing. So it was the playbook, and it was, okay, let's see what works out of that playbook, and let's see what we can add to that playbook.
Wow.
For example, one of the key things is we built a community around the product, because if with Revolut we had the money to get, I know that there's a lot of stuff with macro influencers right now. Let's buy a football stadium and let's get a big influencer talk about us. The problem is, in fintech, you actually need credibility. People are not going to trust you with their money because you bought the National Arena and changed its name to Revolut Arena. They won't. You need credibility. You need a community around the product. And I first used the product and fell in love with the product. And I was like, how can we make people feel the same love towards the product? How can we build a community that's engaged? And that's why I worked really hard for the first month by myself, because all the team was distributed. And I remember working with Rob, who's Romanian as well and who was based in London, and he was helping me. he was also having a full-time job in the same time, but he was also helping me with putting together everything in Romania. And I did a tour. And back then we were organizing like Revolut events in London, where we were only inviting the most active users. And I said, how about we try it out differently? So we call them Rev Rallies as well, but I'm going to keep a mix. Half of the attendance is going to be our most active users, and half of the attendance are going to be people that are just interested to find out more about the product.
Wow.
Because then you create that sense of community, and it's not only you talking about the things that you're launching with the product, it's also the existing users answering questions to the new potential users. And it went really, really great, and it gave us a lot of traction. And on the basis of that traction, when we started incentivizing referrals in Romania, growth exploded.
Wow. It's incredible. Because I remember, I think Romania was one of the highest growing countries back then, right?
I think it's still, I remember the 100K campaign when we grew for 5 days in a row, the days of the campaign, more than we were growing in the UK. And I remember I was going to speak, I was having a workshop at an event, and I drove until the event, and then I opened up the Slack. I told you that I can't keep my phone next to me because I'm always checking something. And my manager, who's now a mentor as well, and we are in touch, pings me and asks me, what the heck did you do? And I'm like, good or bad, Andreas? You need to be more specific than that. And he's like, have you seen the numbers? And I'm like, no, I haven't. And then I look at the numbers, and he's like, you're growing faster than the UK. It's the first time this happens in the history of Revolut. And we didn't have money to invest. I mean, that zero marketing budget is a marketing tactic, because even when you're organizing the events, you're spending money, and paying people is spending money as well.
I love when people keep saying that Tesla doesn't spend any money in marketing. I was like, you don't understand what marketing is, my friend.
Yeah, it's about, you always spend some money, but we didn't have major marketing budgets. What we did back then was that we offered the card for free for 5 days straight from the app, and we rolled out the localized version of Revolut. And back then, and it's still funny to date, it's me. I spent 3 weeks. The person that's doing the localization, I think they spent months, but I spent 3 weeks, 7 out of 7, translating every single string in localize and literally localizing the app. Because in the beginning, we didn't have the app localized because it didn't matter. And the campaign was Revolut now speaks Romanian. And talking about, I was a country manager, I was a director level at Revolut. Nothing is beyond getting back to ego and things you're willing to do. Nothing is beyond your pay grade. And this is something that you give away to the teams as well, because if they see that you're willing to go the extra mile and do the translations and take the garbage out, they are going to do the same. And they are going to be one of the values at Uber that I resonate with to date is be an owner, not a renter. You're not here renting your skill. You're an owner of the business. Act like one.
What are some of the key components you see and you look to when it comes to growth marketing for startups? What should founders focus on first?
So first, they should focus. That's a very important thing, because I've seen brainstorming sessions and what should we focus on, and then we make like a list, very long list of what they should focus on first. Product, there's no question here. So I'm biased because I'm not quite a marketer. I'm a growth person and a product marketer, which puts me in between product and marketing, and I'm always going to be skewed towards product myself. But they should focus on the product, and they should focus on things that actually move the needle in the product. Because you can do, I'm a groupie of Andrew Chen, former who we worked at Uber in the same time back in the day.
Wow.
We're part of the OG, the old guard at Uber. And he was telling about the useless features and the useless pivots that we're doing. So I think they should focus and they should prioritize those features that actually matter for the customers. And or they should actually use the prioritization framework and do less but more impactful than a lot but really useful, really useless. And I think this is really important, like focusing on what matters for the customer, not on the shiniest thing, not on the thing that can make us famous. None of the companies that achieved greatness got there because they wanted to be famous. And it's about doing less things in growth in my teams as well. I remember when I joined Bitpanda initially, I had an inherited team of 65, 67 people. And I wanted to understand what they're working on. And I spent my first month literally meeting with every single person in the team. And then I asked them, I want to know the key initiatives that we are working on. And I gathered a list of, I kid you not, 187 marketing and growth initiatives.
Wow.
And I was looking at that list and I was like, look how we are. We are now exactly like a hamster in a wheel. We're going to need to, and that's really important for founders as well. We need to kill our babies and be willing to kill not our literal babies, but we need to, yes, there are our ideas and they are great maybe, but we need to kill some of them in order to be able to do fewer, but do them better and actually deliver impact. So it's not, if you're working on 100 projects, that's wrong. Focus.
You talked about localization at Revolut. How is that? How different do you see Romania and Eastern Europe, maybe from Western Europe, working then afterwards as a global chief at Revolut? How I don't know, do things work differently for the Romanian and Eastern European market? What should founder focus on, especially founders that maybe want to expand from Romania to, I don't know, Austria, or from Romania to Poland, or so on and so forth?
So, first, you need to understand that Europe is hard. Europe is not the US. In Europe, every single market is different. And I sometimes find funny that I hear, hey, we're testing this on Romania as a test market and let's see how it goes afterwards. Truth is, you're going to have to test it again and again and again on every market. You might have things that are similar from market to market, like user behavior, because users in the West are less risk averse than users in the East. But still, every market, the channels that are going to work, the distribution channels that are working in one market might fail gloriously in another market. So just to give you an example from Uber, distribution partnerships, they were the main acquisition channels in Poland. They never worked in Romania. So we are neighboring countries. We are part of the CE. You can't apply the same playbook. You can't have we were talking about the playbook at Revolut earlier. You can't have a step-by-step playbook that you're applying in lookalike markets, because even markets that might look alike, like they look alike, pun intended, might not actually look alike. So you need to actually test and retest, and you need to adapt the distribution strategy market by market in Europe. And that's damn hard. And that makes it really hard for a startup to conquer Europe versus going for Brazil, versus going for US, where you have very big, highly homogeneous markets in terms of user behavior, and where you can apply similar distribution playbooks in the US state by state. At Uber, we had fairly similar distribution playbooks.
How important, just a follow-up question here, how important is to have someone in your team when you expand that has that local, I don't know, know-how, feeling, and so on and so forth? I know, hiring a local person, or I know, a couple of first months you can do something even without that.
It's gonna be more expensive to do something without that person. And I always recommend, want to win Europe, what are your key markets in Europe? And on the key markets in Europe, look at the serviceable, obtainable markets. So don't look at market size, don't look at vanity metrics, don't look at GDP per capita, look literally at serviceable, obtainable market based on the competitive landscape and everything. I don't know, when we started the European expansion with Revolut, was Romania their first choice? Not really. They found me and they said, let's try Romania out. And it worked. But don't look at your usual suspects and say, we need Germany, France, and Spain. You might not. Maybe other markets are your markets, but in your key markets, hire a person on the ground, at least one person on the ground that knows the market in and out. Otherwise, you're going to have to work with agencies anyway, and they are more expensive.
I mean, when I look at all your past experiences and work and professional career, definitely the one word that I would use is growth. But I would like to like turn this into your personal development and personal life. How is, I don't know, Irina hacking her personal growth? Because I think this is super important. It's super linked, professional and personal. You cannot grow more than you grow yourself. A company cannot grow more than its leader, and so on and so forth. How do you, I don't know, what strategies do you use for yourself to grow more and to grow better? And I don't know, maybe you have some sort of KPI for yourselves in learning and so on and so forth.
Oh, I do have a KPI. I have a personal development plan that I'm building every year and that I'm following. I was telling that I think self-awareness is a key skill for leaders. I'm always doing like, starting from Uber, in the assessments, we were doing T3s, B3s. So top three strengths, bottom three improvement areas. And then I make a conscious choice. Okay, some of my improvement areas are going to be an improvement area always. I'm not going to invest in them because I can at best become mediocre at them. But then you need to invest in your strengths in order to make sure that you're world class in those areas. And you need to choose which of the improvement areas to actually address and grow. And based on that, I build, and I've also shared, I have a blog post when I actually shared a template on how I build my personal learning plan every year.
Link it below, definitely.
I build a personal development. I share the template as well. I build a personal development plan and I follow it every year, because otherwise it's very, very easy to fall through the cracks. It's very, very easy to not find time for learning. And I think it's really important to know, hey, what's really important for you? If I want to remain relevant as a professional, I need to keep learning. If I stop learning, I don't stay in the same place. I'm going backwards actually, because the world moves ahead and it moves ahead without me. So it may be a bit FOMO induced as well, but I'm always in a program of sorts. So I was like, now it's autumn and I always around October, from August to October, I choose a new program to enroll in. And I was telling you during the break, and now I've started something that's a passion for me, but I started a certification in nutrition science because I'm really interested in the world, in healthcare and longevity first, but also in the world of health tech, and I think it actually helps. And I'm also starting a certification in data science in the same time, in order to keep, for me, it's really hard. I also read. So every night I killed Netflix. I mean, I didn't kill Netflix. So if you have shares, don't just sell them. But I used to binge watch before sleep, which actually affected the quality of my sleep. Not anymore. I'm watching series when I'm running. I'm running on the treadmill in the gym. So if I want to watch more, I run more, which is good for my health. And I'm before sleep, I always read, even if I read one page only.
Nice.
I always read when I'm not spending time with my friends on WhatsApp, which happens frequently as well. And I think it's really, really hard. I think for every person in tech, it's really hard. There are so many things. Work never stops. Like you can literally work 24 hours days if you want. Still, my frustration to date is that my day is only 24 hours because I like to do so many things. But it's very important. I was reading during the flight this morning. I was reading an article from Elena Verna. I'm a groupie of her as well. The B2B marketing gal. She's at Dropbox now. And she was telling that she hates the term work-life balance because it's work-life prioritization in the end. And I have a lot of things to juggle on a daily basis. I have a 5-year-old, which takes all my time when I'm not working. It makes work seem like the Maldives sometimes. I have my husband. I have my gym that it's a non-negotiable for me, and I try to have at least 5 workouts per week.
Wow.
Sometimes 7 out of 7. A lot of times 7 out of 7. I have a lot of things to juggle. It's learning. It's the work. I think what's important is to understand that hey, there are a lot of platitudes out there on the internet, and when you become a parent, everything hits you, and there are that you find the perfect moms moms out there who are like, I'm not perfect, mom. I'm not perfect at anything I do. That's the growth mindset you need to learn. You can't be perfect. If you say I'm perfect in anything I do, that's self-sufficiency, and you stop, and then you're no longer perfect. So it was very short-lived anyway. And they're like, family always comes first. No, it does not. I'm sorry to cast that spell and ruin it for you. It doesn't. Yeah, of course, if my kid is sick, I'm taking care of him. Of course, family is the most important thing to me, and my husband and my kid are the most important thing to me. But do they always come in front of work? No, because sometimes you have that board presentation, and who doesn't? It's it sounds really, really bad, and people are really good at lying to themselves, but it's like, there's a metaphor, it's the juggling ball metaphor. So being a working parent is like juggling with a lot of balls. The problem is that some of those balls are crystal and some of those balls are plastic, and you're going to inevitably have some balls that fall, but make sure that the balls that fall are the plastic one and not the glass ones. So sometimes I prioritize work. Yes, I do. Sometimes I jump on a plane and I leave, and then I have full confidence in my husband, who's my co-parenting partner, that he's keeping the kid alive until I'm back. It's a really good confidence to have. Sometimes he leaves and I'm keeping the kid alive and happy most of the times while he's away. I think it's really important to understand what's important for you at that particular point, and that's why we were talking about work-life balance, and we were talking about the hustle culture. And I don't believe in hustle culture, but I think there are times in one's career when you need to actually go the extra mile, because this is how you go through that growth. So I think it's very important, getting back, I think it's very important to have grit. I think it's very important to have the drive and to prioritize. Is it easy? No. And it's always about trade-offs, because every time, and that's why I'm working with some of the founders. I'm working on, hey, you need to actually say no, because when you're not saying no, you're actually saying no to things that matter to you.
The crystal balls.
Yeah. So getting back to the crystal balls, there's no recipe. There's no let's do it like that. I'm obsessively organized, and I constantly feel the frustration that, hey, I'm not able to do as many things as I like, because there are only 24 hours in the day. So let's prioritize. So for me, my sleep is non-negotiable as well. If I don't sleep 7 hours, I'm not very friendly, and I'd rather sleep the 7 hours.
Everyone would rather have you sleep 7 hours.
And I'm not. As a leader, my key role is to take decisions, and I need to actually talking decision making one-on-one. I need to make the right decisions, and I cannot make the right decisions if I have brain fog. And if you don't sleep, you're always in a perpetual state of brain fog, which I can't afford. So I think it's really important to write things down, what's important for you, and it's really important to make sure that everything that's important for you fits into the schedule, and everything that's not, you just drop it.
Just two very short follow-up personal questions I have regarding this. One is, what type of content works best for you when you learn something? And second, what 1-2 tools that you use for keeping yourself organized?
So type of content, written. I'm old this way. I'm very old school this way.
I wouldn't say necessarily that. I think that written content is and it will remain the type of content that will get you as much learning as possible per time spent.
Video is taking, for me, it's faster than video. So for me, I always look, this is a 1.5 hour video. I'd rather read the transcript, because I go faster through it, and then I can take notes on what interests me. But then again, I would probably read the transcripts of movies as well, because I consume written content better. It's like, this is how I'm wired. And I'm old school this way. And in terms of tools, so first I use Asana. I think I've been one of the beta testers of Asana. So I
Wow.
first used Asana in 2011. It was just started when Dustin Moskovitz left Facebook to start Asana, and I'm using it ever since. I'm using it. If it's not in Asana, it doesn't exist. So everything personal, professional, I have various projects over there, irrespective of the work that we're oftentimes at work, we're using Jira, we're using Notion. I can
Yeah.
use basically any tool, but I keep my personal Asana in the same thing. And again, talking about old school, I use pen and paper. So I have an agenda where I literally write my to-do list. It depends on, sometimes I write it daily when I get more time to work, but normally I like to write weekly to-do lists because it's very, very hard for me. My program is unpredictable, and my role is normally to enable people to get that work done. So I have a lot of calls during the day.
Yeah.
My personal records is 21 calls in one day. So I can't commit that I'm going to do this or that, but at the end of the week, I always do it at the end of the week. I do the planning for the next week, and I know that these are my non-negotiable. These are the things that I need to get done. And then they are in Asana, of course, but I write them down all with pen and paper. My friends are still laughing that my notebooks look like they're calligraphy notebooks, like third grade calligraphy notebooks, because I have really beautiful handwriting. And then whenever something is done, I always have a blue pen and a red pen. And whenever something is done, I circle it with the red in order to mark it down. I'm very, very visual. And this is what helps me. And again, it's about the third thing is not a tool, it's about flexibility, because there are so many things you'd like to do, but there are only so many hours in the day. So then you actually need to make a choice. I have my non-negotiables. I try to spend a couple of hours daily with a kid, no matter
Crystal
what.
balls.
Sorry?
The crystal balls.
Yeah.
I love that analogy. So that will stay with me for long.
And sometimes you're going to just stumble and break some crystal balls. Good thing is that most of the times you can actually mend them. I take a lot of pride that I didn't manage to miss any school celebration
Nice.
so far. He's in kindergarten and he doesn't have a lot. That's the disclaimer. But it is what it is. And I think it's about being kind to ourselves. It's about being humble, and it's about the grit. I think if I look back at my entire career path, if there's something that brought me here, is the grit and the desire to get things done. And I think this is something that you need to have, and everything else you're going to figure it out, because again, no one is perfect and no one has all the answers in growth, in marketing, in product, and in life in general.
Any idea how we nurture that more in the younger generation, or I don't know, younger founders?
So I think, stay foolish, stay hungry. I think it's about staying hungry. And I think one problem that we have, and it's a question to me as well. And when we were young, we were striving for stuff. We wanted really badly stuff that we couldn't get. And most of us wanted a better life, and our parents were focused on, hey, education in order to get a better life than ours. And it's not only the former communist bloc heritage, it's worldwide. We were hungrier as kids, not hungrier like
Yeah.
physically hungry.
Even that sometimes
Yeah.
some of us.
Yeah, we were hungrier as kids than the new generations. And I wonder, and I'm reading on this as well, because I wanna build that in my kid as well, and this is something that I'm struggling with. When you're no longer that hungry, when you're no longer willing to desire, how can you actually build that same grit? And I think it's about, on the bright side, I'm optimistic, because I think it's like the Maslow pyramid, and why I'm also an advocate of universal basic income as well. I think that once you have the basis all covered, you can focus on actually creating an impact. You can actually focus on building something that's meaningful for the world, for the society, for making a dent in the universe, no matter how BS it might sound. I do believe in it. I love purpose-driven businesses. I've always loved purpose-driven businesses, but you can't actually focus on that when you're too hungry. So I think this can help, like enabling and nurturing nurturing the passions. If we talk about children, and for us, it's about, again, if you have anything you want, and you have a comfortable life, and you no longer strive for anything at the basis of the Maslow's pyramid, just think about your purpose. I did a really good class at Stanford, part of the former program that I did, which was called Creating a Life of Consequence. And one of the exercises that we had as part of that class was to write our own obituaries. And
Wow.
it was really funny because it gets to the point of, what do you want to be remembered for? And I think if you start building, again, you can only connect the dots looking backwards, but you can make an exercise and look backwards now. So how can you build that grid? Start from what you want to be remembered for, because it's clear that longevity, 100 years old or 70 years old,
coming.
it's an end date. We have an expiration date. So what do you want to leave behind? And work towards what you want to leave behind, and do something that, for me, I don't believe in do something that you're really passionate about and you're not gonna work a day in your life. No, you're gonna you're gonna work your ass off, and at some point you might even lose the pleasure and the passion in what you are doing because of how much you're working yourself. But if you do something you're really passionate about, you get in the sense of flow. You are inherently good at it. You exercise at it. So I think it's about, if you don't have this, I think you haven't found your true calling and your true passion in it. And not all of us are doctors, or not all of us are literally saving lives, which is a calling and everything. But you can still find your personal calling. You can still find a way to make an impact in your area and do something to actually change, leave something behind. And when you work towards that, you inherently find your grit. I hope.
Thank you so much, Irina, for
Thank you.
all of your insights and everything. Thank you for coming to Radio all the way from Bucharest, and finger crossed for what's next for you.
Thank you for having me. I don't know yet. I've recently stepped down from my role at Mondly. I want to get back to the earlier stage of startup world.
Once doing that, you always want to get back to that. From me talking with multiple people in multiple roles, they all like want to come back to working with the early stage and with founders at the beginning of their journey.
It's about the drive and the grit, and being it a full-time role in a purpose-driven company that I really believe in, with a great product, of course, because otherwise I can't do growth on a bad product. Sorry, I'm not a magician. I'm just a growth person. Or solopreneurship. I don't know just yet, but I'm taking my time. I'm in no rush to figure things out. I'm working with startups now as well. So,
Congrats, and thank you so much again.
thank you for having me.